Now I'd like to take a few moments to go through a sample project that's going to demonstrate comments and string formatting. Comments are very important in your code. They're a way of leaving notes for yourself or for other people. And I say for yourself because there will be times in your career where you'll go back to code that you wrote a long time ago, and you're not necessarily going to remember why you wrote things the way you did. So leaving a comment trail is good for that. It's also much easier to write your own code than it is to read other people's code. So comments give us a way to leave kind of a map of what we were thinking for other developers. It's very common when my apprentices are doing exercises at the Guild that even the simplest exercise will have 3, 4, 5 solutions to it that different people come up with. They all tend to work, but you're going to find that just like writing prose, there are many ways to express an idea in programming. So comments can help other developers follow our trail. There's a couple ways of doing comments. I've demonstrated them here at the top of the file. 2 slashes will do a single line comment, and in Visual Studio the line will turn green. A comment in your code is not going to be run, so we can write whatever we want, leave a note for somebody else. If we need more than one line, we can put a slash and then an asterisk, and that's going to do a multiple line comment. So I can write a paragraph of text here, and then if I do asterisk slash at the end, we open and close the comment, and that's how we do a multiple line. The final type of comment is a documentation comment. If we put 3 slashes before a method or even a class, as I'll demonstrate here, it will give us a summary tag. This summary tag can be used to generate documentation and IntelliSense in the system. If it's attached to a method, you'll see that it will list every parameter or variable that gets passed into that method so that we can write what the reason for that variable is and help other developers use our methods. There's also tools that will generate HTML documents based off of these summary tags. So it can be pretty useful in a system to do this. The next thing I'd like to do is demonstrate how we can format strings. Oftentimes in applications, we'll be working with numeric data or date information, and when we display that information to the user, we want to format it. For example, putting commas in the thousand places of a number, or displaying currency with a $sign in decimal places. Or maybe even putting leading zeros on a number if we were generating a serial number or a barcode. So I'm going to show you a bunch of different techniques for doing that. So this application starts off, and it's just going to write out, let's demo formatting strings, press enter to begin. When the user hits enter, it's going to clear the console window, and then I'm going to call a method called demo substitution strings. We're going to cover methods specifically later on in the course, but for now, all I want you to understand is that when this code block gets to this command, it's going to go down and find the same name command, and it's going to start running all the code in this block. And when it finishes, gets to the bottom of our code block curly brace, it's going to come back and go to the next line. So methods will redirect the program to a different subroutine, run all that code, and then return to the place where they left off. So the first thing it's going to do is run the demo substitution strings method. So I'm going to kick this application off so we can walk through it together. So we press enter to begin. It's going to drop into this method and print that substitution strings are easier to read than concatenation. What is a substitution string? Well, to demonstrate that, first I'm going to get some data in from the user. I'm going to ask the user what their name is, and I'm going to store that in a variable called username. Then I'm going to ask the user for their favorite color, and I'm going to store that in a variable called favorite color. When I go to write this out using console.writeLine, I'm going to write hello, then a curly brace and the number 0, and then another curly brace. Your favorite color is 1. A new line. I am a big fan of the name, And there's that curly brace 0 again. These are called substitution strings. They always start from 0. And what you can do is use them as a placeholder in your string. And then at the end of this double quoted string, there's a comma, and then we list out some data, which happens to be in our username and favorite color variable. And what this will do is position 0 is the first bit of data after the comma, which is our username. So if I type in Eric into username, it's going to say hello, and it's going to replace this with the value of username, which is Eric. So it will say, hello, Eric. Your favorite color is, and when I enter green, it's going to take the favorite color, which is in the first position, green, and then it's going to print a new line and say, I am a big fan of the name, and it's going to grab this value again and put Eric right there. The important thing to notice here is that computers count from 0. So position 0 is actually what we would call the first position as we learned how to count in kindergarten. This is a common theme that crops up in a lot of languages. It takes a little bit to get used to, but always start from 0. I also want you to notice that we don't have to pass variables in. We can also use a substitution string with a literal number or a string if we wanted to. So I can print out my favorite number is 7. So let's go ahead and run this so that you can see that it works. There's our print statement. What's my name? Eric. What's my favorite color? Green. And it says, hello, Eric. Your favorite color is green. I am a big fan of the name Eric. My purpose in demonstrating that is that you can reuse the same substitution string multiple times if you want to. And then it says my favorite number is 7. That's good to know. But the point being, we can pass a literal into a substitution string. And then when we press enter to continue, it's going to clear the console, and it's going to go back to the main method, and it's going to call the method leftAlign. There's little pluses and minuses over here to the side, so I'm going to hide that method, and here is the leftAlign method, which is going to be run next. In our substitution string, if we put a comma and then put a negative number, whatever data gets put in there will be left aligned. So if we're lining up text like names or account numbers or states or zip codes as I've done here, it will make sure that they all line up on the left. I'm also demonstrating here that in the case of console WriteLine, we don't have to put a literal string in. We can actually store a string in a variable and then reuse it. Like in this case, I'm going to print 3 people's names with their state and their zip code. I'm going to use the same line output format in each console WriteLine. So I can store this in a variable and use it again and again, and that saves me from having to repeat myself. But in this case, it's going to print out John Doe, leftAlign, 15 characters. Then the state, Ohio, leftAlign 2 characters. And a zip code, leftAlign 5 characters. So our substitution strings, 0, 1, 2. Here's data 0, data 1, data 2. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. As you can see, the leftAlign for 15 characters, it left a nice little space here, and this data looks pretty well formatted at this point. When we press enter to continue, we're going to leave the leftAlign method. We're going to come back to the main method, and the next method that gets called is WriteAlign. So let's go find that guy. WriteAlign, if we put a comma and it's a positive number, then it will be right-aligned. This is usually used for numeric data. I left a little comment here just to remind you that I'm storing the format in a variable. And now there's a new little wrinkle here. I'm going to print out an account number that's leftAlign to 15 spaces, and then I'm going to print out a number that's going to be right aligned for 9 characters, but then I have a colon and the capital letter C. This colon C is called a format code, and that allows us to format numeric data and other data like dates in very specific ways. C is for currency format. So when this gets printed out to the screen, it's going to print the text account number, and then it's going to print $5,302.32. And the currency format that it chooses is the one that's appropriate for what is installed on my computer. There are ways, if you research on your own, you can Google globalization. There are ways that you can display other countries' currencies. By default, it's going to use the one that's on your computer. On this line, I printed out a very large currency that's going to be more than 9 characters long, just because I want to show you what happens if a number is bigger than the space you allotted for it. So let's come back here and hit enter. And you'll see here that these numbers ended up being right aligned, so all the decimal points lined up pretty well, except for the one that's too big. It didn't throw an error, all it did was allow it to overflow. So always make sure when you're doing these string formats that you know what the maximum size of your data is going to be so that you can account for it. The next thing, after this method finishes, it's going to jump back to the top, and it's going to call the format numerical data method. So we come down here. I left a comment for you. This is an MSDN article. MSDN is the primary source written by Microsoft for documentation on .NET. If you take this link and put it in your browser, it will show you all of the standard number formats that I'm about to generate here. But this format numerical data, we already saw that C was the currency format, so it's going to print 12345 as a currency. Then I'm going to demonstrate D, which also has a number attached to it. So this D9, we're going to see what kind of format that prints out. Same thing with F3 and N for number format. It's important to note that we can also do exponential format. That's your E syntax that you probably learned in algebra in school. And we can also print out in hexadecimal format, which is a special format that computers use for transferring data. So let's go ahead and go back to our application and run this guy. And you'll see that the currency format indeed printed out a nice looking currency. But look at what D9 did. D9 said that this number is supposed to be a length of 9. 12345 is a length of 5, so it padded 4 zeros on the left. This is very useful for account numbers, serial numbers, things like that that you might print out on invoices. F3 format says that this should be fixed as 3 decimal places, so it went ahead and added 3 decimal places after 12345. N format for numeric puts on 2 decimal places and then puts on a comma at each of the thousands positions. The E format, we used capital E and lowercase e. And all that capital or lowercase does is determine which casing of E is going to be used in the number that gets printed out. So 1.2345 E plus 004 is your standard scientific calculator notation for the number 12345. For hex, I switched it up a little bit. I went to the number 9999 because hex will actually count up to a higher number than 10 in each position. When it gets to 9, it goes A, B, C, D, E, F, and I just wanted to demonstrate for you. The number 9999 as hex is 1869F. And again, capital X means that the F will be capitalized, lowercase x means that the F will be lowercased. So that's very cool. This one finishes. It goes down to the next one, which is string.format. I've shown you nothing but console.write lines. A lot of times in different applications, like web applications or applications that run on your desktop, you're going to want to do the formatting, but you're not going to have a console to work with. In this case, you can use a string command called string.format, And it works a lot like console.writeLine. You still put in a string and you put a comma and then all the data that you want to pass in. But string.format actually returns a string. So we can run this whole formatting. It's going to put $25.39 into this spot, and it's going to store it in the string total line. And then we're going to go ahead and print that out to the console. So I can demonstrate that happening. There we are. Total $25.39. So string.format handles your substitution strings, no problem. It returns the value as a string. It doesn't actually print it to the screen or do anything like that. It's mostly for storing things for later. And that pretty much covers the basics of string formatting.